It's just gone 12 noon in London, 7 a.m. in Philadelphia, and around the world, it's time for the Muckrakers. And welcome back to the Muckrakers. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Here on the Muckrakers, as always, we pledge to continue tackling the most pressing and controversial news issues of our time. And boy, are there some of those at the moment. Our mission is to provide more light and less heat in our unwavering quest to uncover the truth and to inform, educate, and entertain, all with dignity and respect. And it's vital we don't just ask the questions, but question those answers. Well, today we're going to discuss the use by the justice system for political ends. And what is the state doing? And to help us do that, I'm delighted that we're joined by TNT Titan, James Freeman, and also RADHA, whose name I got right. RADHA Sterling, how are you, RADHA?
Very well, thanks. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. James, have a good weekend?
I had a brilliant weekend, yeah.
Every day's a holiday for James. We love it. It's going to be good. Let me tell you about RADHA, because she's a very impressive person. Delighted to have her on the show. She's a leading UK-based human rights advocate, crisis manager and policy consultant, focusing on the UAE and the wider Middle East. She's also the founder and CEO of British-based organisation Detained in Dubai, which has helped almost 20,000 victims of injustice over the past 13 years. Due Process International and IPEX, Interpol and Extradition Reform. RADHA also hosts the Gulf Injustice podcast, and I never miss an episode. It's all good. So do listen to that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, free speech is on life support, and I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. It's always attributed to Voltaire, but it was actually friends of Voltaire, the author Evelyn Beatrice Hall. But as I say, freedom of speech is on life support at the moment. I think what would be helpful, RADHA, if we unpack, first of all, what the law says, and then let's look at a few cases, recent cases, where our rights and privileges are being eroded. So what does the law say, RADHA?
I mean, I think, just judging from what's happened recently and over the past 8 years in particular, that we're not even very clear on what the law is, how it should be applied. So we apparently have this right to speak publicly, but it can be taken away at any moment if what you say is undesirable. And that could be a political reason. It could be an individual is personally unhappy about it and makes a police complaint. So I think we're seeing the misapplication of laws that were designed or sold to the public as protection for your safety, to help protect you from things like hate speech, discrimination. And now they're being completely misused, as we always sort of suspected they would be. And we can look at the terrorism laws that were brought in quite a while ago. At the time, even grave concerns were raised then that these terrorism laws could be misused against the British citizens. And I think we're finally seeing that come to fruition. It was only a matter of time before citizens would be arrested under these expansive and vague terrorism laws. We've seen it recently with Richard Medhurst. We've seen it, Tommy Robinson talking about being arrested under terrorism laws. Whether or not they're detained for lengthy periods of time is sort of irrelevant. When you start misusing laws that were absolutely designed and sold to the British public as things that should be supported, that we should be happy about, and now they're suddenly being weaponized against us, I think that's very, very concerning. I've seen it in the United States, and we're seeing it now in the United Kingdom. And I had hoped that the UK would sort of withstand that pressure, or stand up for, those sort of rights that our society has been ingrained with. Instead, we're following the US-led practice of weaponizing the justice system against political opponents, against people speaking publicly, against things like COVID or lockdowns, or against our Prime Minister, against our media, our mainstream news media, and the narratives being sold to us. We've seen people who have spoken about the war in Ukraine, Russia, who's responsible. Is it NATO? Is it, is Ukraine wholly innocent, or has the US pushed them into this conflict, and should we bear some responsibility? So these voices are not the voices that the government wants to hear, and they have absolutely weaponized the justice system against those people. But not just the justice system, it's also through treaties, through agreements, and through private communications with social media companies, with bodies that can damage those people's livelihood, that can completely censor their voices and also defame them. It's now become absolutely common tactic of the government to defame people who are speaking publicly narratives that they don't agree with. I saw it with Tara Reid, one of my clients in America. She spoke publicly about Joe Biden's sexual assault against her. The first thing they did is brand her a Russian asset. And of course, she wasn't. She worked for the senator and had nothing to do with it. And you're seeing, of course, sexual assault allegations being frivolously mounted through media campaigns, not through law courts. So we're seeing that kind of weaponization of the media as well. And I think that what we need to do is have a look at what laws we currently have and how we can define them and how we can include protections against this government overreach. I think that's long overdue, and I would like to see a new Prime Minister, a new administration really looking into including those protections, those free speech protections that allegedly they have in the United States Constitution that are still being challenged over there. It's hard enough for them, and I think we should have the same thing installed into our Bill of Rights, that we have that right to free speech. And yes, that should include our right to access the internet as we grow into this sort of technical future, technology-driven future. If we can't access the internet or speak freely on the internet, we're essentially not going to be able to have a livelihood. We're not going to be able to survive in this modern world.
Yeah, you make some excellent points. I mean, it's George Orwell who said if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. And you mentioned about Prime Minister. Well, it's the Prime Minister's birthday today, Sir Keir Starmer. He's now 62. Can you believe it? What's your birthday message to Sir Keir, James?
Really? I think I'll pass on that one, Andrew. I don't think we're allowed to broadcast that kind of language.
Yeah, always a joy. Well, tell us about the general principle, because RADHA makes some interesting points. I think I think therefore I am arrested would be the latest version of Descartes. And let me just fill you in on the law, because I know, James, you wanted a refresher on this. It's Article 10, which protects your right to hold your own opinions, and that's of the Human Rights Act of 1998. You can hold your own opinions and express them freely without government interference. But there are certain restrictions, as long as they can show their action is lawful, necessary, and proportionate. And the various exceptions are to protect national security, territorial integrity, the borders of the state, or public safety, and also to prevent disorder or crime, protect health or morals. And it's those that we need to be aware of when we start looking at some of these cases. And the recent cases are really quite shocking, aren't they, James?
Yeah, they are, but we shouldn't be surprised, because we can go all the way back to 2005, not long after the terrorism laws were updated in the UK. And there was an example. It was actually when the last Labour government was in power, and Jack Straw was giving a talk at the conference about the Iraq war at the time, and there was a heckler. I think he was in his 60s, a little old man, and he was heckling from the back. And they got all heavy on him, and the security took him out. And then the police refused his re-entry based upon terrorism laws. That should have been a clue, I think, to the direction we were heading in, because I think it's clear that they are being misused, these terrorism laws. And, you know, I had a look this morning, a lot of the high-profile cases, and one thing that is clear and consistent throughout all these cases is they seize all of your devices. So I think there does seem, the appearance anyway, of sort of arresting people on a fishing expedition. We don't like what this person is saying, so we're going to arrest them. We can then get access to all of their devices. They can't, stay silent under terrorism law, so they've got to give away passwords and that kind of thing. And then we can have a field day. We can find out, who their contacts are, what they're working on, and all of this. And I think there is evidence of that. Tommy Robinson, for example, whilst, a lot of people would argue that he is a very disruptive person in the UK, I think that is kind of, and he's got a violent past. But to use terrorism laws against him for arranging a protest, he put out a statement saying that the whole of his questioning was about who he's working with, and eventually it all led up to, and what's your password for your devices. So yeah, I think we should be worried. I really do. And Assange obviously is the big one here. It was clear that he was only in jail in the UK on the behest of America, no charges for years and years and years, which surely is something that in British society we're told. Well, as I grew up, I was told that that only happened in North Korea and China. So yeah, we should be worried, I think.
No, I think you're right, and it's a global problem. Yes, Radha.
I mean, the overreaching US sort of universal jurisdiction that I think we're seeing lately is so concerning to me, and I've seen how it's affected multiple clients of mine. You look at Julian Assange and how they used Sweden, their ally, to sort of target him. And Keir Starmer was having meetings with the US at the time, sort of diplomatic meetings to go after Julian Assange, and prevented Sweden from actually meeting him at the Ecuadorian embassy, which would have probably led to the withdrawal of the extradition proceedings. Then you see Pavel Durov arrested in France under, basically trying to criminalize him for activity on his platform, which is a massive overreach. But also, I believe that they are doing that on behalf of the United States. I don't doubt at all that the US wanted to get involved, wanted to target him, especially after his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he said publicly in front of millions and millions of people that he declined to work with US authorities and that he maintained free speech and that he was going to continue running his platform from the UAE. Of course, he became a massive target at that point and very easy to have him arrested by France. So I think, The Guardian coming forth multiple times and saying, let's arrest Elon Musk. Here's how to arrest Elon Musk. And that writer used to work for the Clinton administration as well in the cabinet. So him calling for the arrest of Elon Musk and then Pavel detained in France, I think this is extremely concerning. I've seen British nationals who have been charged in the United States for violating US law, even though they're not US citizens, and even though they weren't in the US, hadn't traveled to the US, but the US tried to indict them, put them on Interpol and try to have them extradited. But I feel that the US also does this kind of behavior and has people like Pavel arrested, or whoever their targets are, has them arrested, and even if they know that they're not going to win ultimately, having them arrested, getting all of their information, putting them through a punishing and expensive process, detaining them potentially for up to a year before failing with extradition requests. I think we're going to see more and more of this, and I think British citizens and Americans now as well, with the UK saying we want to extradite Americans for their speech on platforms about UK riots. I mean, it's gone absolutely crazy. And I think we need to say no to US jurisdiction or universal jurisdiction. We wouldn't accept a request from China. We wouldn't accept cooperation from Saudi. So why do we think it's okay for the US to apply universal jurisdiction through the use of their allies, like they did with Julian Assange, like they're doing with France, and then we turn around and say we want the same privileges? I don't think the US is going to have reciprocation when it comes to the UK trying to extradite people for their speech.
Yeah, you make some excellent points. And as I say, if you look around the world, freedom of speech is on life support, basically. In the UK, we've had mass arrests of citizens for using memes. You've had France, as you mentioned, about the founder of Telegram being arrested and charged now. Ireland has tried to ban mean memes, if you're being mean to people. Brazil, we've got Elon Musk effectively being banned. X has been banned in the country. Similar in Australia, they're trying to censor. It's very worrying all around the world. And we've also had Mark Zuckerberg coming out and saying about the pressure that was put on him.